What's up? Wildlings, Colin here, the Wild CEO, and it's all about fat. Fat, the misaligned, demonized nutrient that you've been told for years you gotta limit and watch, and all the low-fat products that have come out. I'm gonna talk to you today about why that's not the case, but first, a quick education on what are the different types of fat, because the thing about fat, dietary fat, right? There's so many different variables and kinds, and even within each category, whether it's monounsaturated, polyunsaturated, saturated, even within those, there are a myriad of different kinds of fats from the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and they all affect your body in a different way. So I want to give you an overview of the different kinds of fats in today's video to make you a more educated consumer and a more educated purchaser, a consumer of fats and also a consumer that buys fats. So we're going to talk about the types of fat today, and then we're going to talk about, are they good? Are they bad? Should you avoid them? Should you have a lot of them? Does it not really matter? Can you moderate this, not moderate that? On and on and on and on. I want to give you a primer on all things dietary fat, so you can be more aware of the fats you're consuming, and so you can ignore many of the dogmas today that have wrongfully accused certain fatty acids and wrongfully claimed that they contribute to obesity or heart disease or cancer. So you're going to learn something very ironic in today's video about how these certain fatty acids that have been blamed for things like cancer and heart disease and weight gain are actually some of the best things that the human, that's you and me, can consume to protect against the very things they were accused of causing. It's some crazy shit, I know. There are still millions of trainers and weight loss gurus and the government and blah, blah, blah that are still promoting this low-fat agenda, and it is amazing that with the amount of research that we've had come out and the amount of research that's used that we've debunked, we still have this anti-fat campaign. So let's get into the basics of what dietary fat is. Let's first talk about saturated fat, monounsaturated fat, and polyunsaturated fat, the primary fatty acids. Okay, saturated fat is going to be a stable fat that your brain is actually comprised of a lot of saturated fats. It's one of the most stable fats for high heat cooking because it doesn't have the same single and double bonds that mono and polyunsaturated do, thus making it the most heat stable. And also a lot of the research around saturated fat to this point that has tried to link it to coronary heart disease or cholesterol or any of those other things has basically been debunked in this point, and researchers are finally realizing that saturated fat is one of the primary fuel sources for the human animal. So monounsaturated fat has one double bond, carbon bond, making it a bit more resistant to damage compared to something like polyunsaturated fat. So monounsaturated means single bond, and you find this in olive oil. You also find all these fats in the animal kingdom, but it just depends on the ratios and how much, and it depends on the form, right? And you also find these in the plant kingdom. So olive oil, macadamia nut oil, the various nut oils have them in different degrees, and they're generally regarded in the health space and the research space as probably okay for you. They're not essential, meaning your body doesn't have to consume them. Your body can make them on your own. And so I think the research is kind of still lacking in knowing if they're going to maybe cause any long-term harm or not. But it seems to be most of the research points to them being either neutral or potentially maybe a slight benefit when consumed. So polyunsaturated fatty acids, PUFAs, P-U-F-A for short, you'll see these are the omega-6 and the omega-3s, and they are defined by two carbon bonds, which means that there's more opportunities for these bonds to break and cause oxidation and rancidity because there are more links in the chain and more connections, if you will. This is also where you find the omega-6s that can lead to a unbalanced ratio between omega-6 and omega-3, and we'll talk about that in a second. But omega-6s are going to be found predominantly in seed oils, nut oils, and vegetable oils. And then, of course, when you look at healthy, clean, wild-caught seafood, for example, like salmon or sardines, you're going to have a lot of the omega-3s, which have the EPA and the DPA, and those are the really, really good ones that you want, but they can be sensitive to heat, and so you do want to avoid heating them. It's also why something like olive oil, you don't want to heat it, right? And there's a difference between ALA and then EPA and DPA and DHA, and that's kind of outside the scope of this video. But generally, you want as many of those clean EPA, DPA, DHA, omega-3s as possible from things like fatty fish and salmon and oysters and things like that. And you want to avoid as much of the omega-6 that comes from a lot of the plant kingdom, a lot of the seed and vegetable oils, because those can easily oxidize and go rancid, and because they have so much omega-6 compared to omega-3, so it throws your balance out of whack. So the way to think about it is your saturated fats are going to be best for cooking, especially high heat, because they're not going to break down the way mono and polyunsaturated are. Monounsaturated is kind of relatively stable, heat stable, and so you could cook with it depending on where it comes from and depending on the temperatures you're using. It's kind of a medium, moderate, stable heat. And then polyunsaturated, you pretty much never want to cook with if you can help it, because they break down so rapidly. And you can see, if you look at all of the seed oils and the vegetable oils that are used in a lot of our high heat cooking, they're using these very omega-6 heavy, double bond, carbon bond vegetable oils and seed oils, and they're cooked on high heat. They're used in fryers, and it is bad news bears. And so that's where canola oil is going to fall into this, but it's also where canola is kind of given a heart-healthy rap, and maybe it doesn't deserve, because it does have monounsaturated. And so we're going to unpack that in today's video. We're also going to look at some of the other reasons why canola might not be the best thing to eat, as well as where it comes from, how it's made, and how it's exposed to toxins and high heat processing, and all these other things that we can get into, and also how it's literally all of it is GMO, right? Literally all of it. So there's this idea of the smoke point, and that is the temperature at which you can cook an oil before it starts smoking, which is generally considered to be the degradation of the oil, and it is oxidizing it and turning it rancid and breaking those carbon bonds, which would then lead to free radicals in your body. And there's just a lot of things we don't really know, but generally, if you take the ancestral lens to this, you would not want to heat a lot of these, especially PUFAs, which are very sensitive to heat. Our ancestors would have never heated those, because our ancestors ate primarily animals, and when we did use cooking and fire, it would have been roasting something like an animal, which has a lot of saturated fat, and we wouldn't have been taking large amounts of these seed and vegetable oils and then cooking them up. It just wouldn't have been practical, so we would never have eaten that kind of omega-6 load, especially in the form of a polyunsaturated fatty acid from a nut, seed, or vegetable, right? And so it's just one of those things that, although there is a lot of research that suggests you don't want to do that and you want to avoid bringing any oil past its smoke point, well, our ancestors would never have eaten a lot of those omega-6 PUFAs in their diet, because it just wasn't available in nature the way it is today, with our mechanical machines and chemical processing and all these things we do to refine these plant stuffs and turn them into this oil that is cheap and ubiquitous, and then we use it in restaurant fryers and processed foods and everything, right? It's just not natural to our species. So generally, when it comes to smoke points, there's a lot of lists online you can find, smoke point lists, and you want to avoid heating those past that smoke point. Is probably a better idea from a health perspective, even if some of the research is yet to be done. There is some research, but there's some that needs to be done still. But again, it's safer in the long run. And if you don't know, right, better safe than sorry. Also, it doesn't taste good. Usually you're burning the oils and it just doesn't taste good. It imparts weird flavors. So you don't want to do it anyways for cooking. So just avoid heating oils past their smoke point as a general rule. And I'll drop a link below to some charts that you can print out that give you all the different oils and their different relative smoke points. Okay, so before we really get into canola, we also got to talk about the idea of the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. The modern Western diet is very high in omega-6 compared to omega-3. And this is because of all the vegetable and seed oils, processed foods, trans fats, and just the lack of animal-based omega-3s, right, which has the EPA and the DPA and the DHA, and how that is so lacking from the diet. And then we have all this processed refined food that has all these seed and vegetable nut oils, and our omega-6 as a result are highly imbalanced. Whereas the theory is that in nature, we would have eaten something closer to a 1-to-1. So every 1 gram of omega-3, you're going to probably have 1 gram of omega-6. When we eat a standard Western diet, you see that we usually have a 20 to 30 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3. And the idea and some of the research would point to the fact that this becomes an inflammatory state, a pro-inflammatory state, which is why a lot of PUFAs and omega-6s are considered pro-inflammatory, even though we need omega-6s, right? But generally we can get all the omega-6 we ever need in animal products. And so if we're eating a very low nut and seed oil diet, we're going to get all the omega-6s we need from our diet from the animals that we're eating. So what you want to try to do is always be cognizant of how many omega-6 laden foods you're eating, because it's very likely you're way out of whack. You want to bring that level down to here, 1-to-1. That's what we find in nature. So there is actually quite a bit of research that would suggest that a better ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 is better for your long-term health. I'm going to drop those links below, but just for a taste, one of these studies shows that a ratio of 2 to 3 omega-6 to omega-3, which means 2 to 3 grams of omega-6 and then 1 gram of omega-3, that ratio helped reduce inflammation in patients with rheumatoid arthritis. And then another one, a ratio of 5:1 had a beneficial effect on patients with asthma, but a ratio of 10:1 had a negative effect. And these actually sound like they're controlled studies. I'll have to dive a little bit deeper into them. But again, if you take a step back from the research and you ask yourself, what is ancestrally appropriate? What is likely our ancestors would have done? What does that look like? You can get a pretty obvious answer to that question. And as a result, you can use your own intuition and better judgment and some common sense so that even if you do have research, you can ignore it or embrace it or whatever, you still know what you need to do. Hey, another day, but thanks for watching that video. That was all about dietary fat. I hope you have a better understanding of the different fats. I know it can be confusing, so don't feel overwhelmed, but I'm gonna do a really quick recap just so that you can leave here with feeling confident that you know a little bit more about the fat that you're eating, all right? So aim for fatty fish, okay? Aim for fat from grass-fed, naturally raised, happy, healthy ruminant animals, whether that's sheep, goat, bison, beef, etc., or wild game, even better. Avoid fats that come from seed and vegetable oils, especially things you don't understand. Safflower, canola, sunflower, peanut, soybean oil, corn oil. These are the industrialized, toxic to humans, food that is subsidized by our government, and there's a lot of BS to all of it, but these are part of the reason that we are killing ourselves today. The seed and vegetable oils are bad news bears for humans. You're not designed to eat them, so don't. Grass-fed dairy, aim for full-fat, raw, organic, grass-fed, whether that's butter, that's ghee, etc. If you're sensitive to dairy, you might want to stay away from that, but that's a good option as well. Tallow, lard, duck fat, anything from, again, healthy, happy animals, especially if you're mixing it up and not using the same thing every single day, are gonna be great options. Each of those have different smoke points, so you're gonna have to kind of check that out. Coconut oil, love it. Anybody that tries to demonize it because they try to claim that saturated fat causes heart disease or cancer or whatever, all that research is null. It's been debunked at this point. It doesn't work that way. Saturated fat, in your body and your brain is made up primarily of saturated fat. So it's like strange that they try to connect that to heart disease, right? Olive oil is fine, just don't heat it and buy the highest quality you can because olive oil is one of the most counterfeited foods on the planet. It ranks #1. In fact, they've tested most olive oil brands on random grocery stores. They take like the top 5 brands and it's about 60 to 80% of the time that the oil in the bottle is not actually olive oil or at least not fully olive oil. 60 to 80% of the time from the top olive oil companies. Can you imagine that? It's crazy. Just goes to show you should not always trust what's in the bottle or what's on the label. And the fat that I've been using lately for high heat cooking, I love it. Avocado oil, it's great. I love it. That's all I'm gonna say about it. So I hope you found this video useful and like and subscribe, share, drop comments below, send me an email to colin@wildfoods.co if you have any questions or comments about anything we've talked about. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Hey, Colin here. Thanks for watching that video. I got a free PDF for you, The 7 Principles of Living Wild. Short and sweet, not long, not gonna be a novel you have to read or anything, just a simple reference of the things that make you a healthy human. So click on the button below, get that right now, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.